and hopefully that works. Um, okay, so without further ado, I think we can get started. So welcome everyone. Our speaker today is Dr. Ryley Hill. So Ryley is an NSERC postdoctoral fellow at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. We're very happy to have him here today to talk about Euclid. So Ryley works on galaxy evolution and cosmology using multi-wavelength observations and is part of a number of consortiums and collaborations to work on this. So today we're going to be talking about Euclid and the Euclid Consortium, and nobody wants to listen to me. They want to listen to you, Ryley, so I will let you take it away. I'll monitor the chat and I'll let you know if we have any questions.
Great, thanks a lot. Let me, so, so yeah, hello everybody. Thanks for inviting me. It's great to see so many people here. I hope I can convince you all to get as excited about Euclid as I am. Before I get started, I just want to point out I'm not the only person at UBC working on Euclid stuff. We have a whole bunch of students, undergrads, master's students, PhD students as well, working on Euclid stuff with me, and I certainly wouldn't be able to do all these things that I'm going to tell you about without their help. So big thanks to the group up here. Um, so I'm going to split this into two parts. So first, I'm going to talk to you a bit about Euclid science, just to get you familiar with the telescope and what it's all about. And then for the next part of the talk, I'm going to explain how you can get involved as grad students here in Canada. So here's Euclid. This is obviously a artist's impression of Euclid because Euclid is way up in space at L2 next to James Webb Space Telescope, so we can't take a real picture of it. But it's an optical and near-infrared telescope, so it has two cameras. One is called VIS. It operates at about, in the visible range, the wavelength of light that you can see with your eyes. And then it has another near-infrared camera called NISP. So it has three filters, YJH, so it's about 1 to 2 microns. And with NISP, you can do both imaging and spectroscopy. With VIS, it just does the imaging. So Euclid does, it has a large field of view. So a single image from this telescope is about half a square degree. And that's why this is such an interesting telescope for me, because in one image, it's going to get tons and tons and tons and tons of galaxies. So you might be familiar with the Hubble Space Telescope. So this is like the Hubble Space Telescope on steroids in terms of how much area it can cover. So Euclid is a mission instrument. It is not something that you propose for. It has a survey schedule. And so it's going to be doing a wide field survey, about 14,000 square degrees of the extragalactic sky, avoiding the Milky Way. And the main purpose of this survey, the wide field survey, is to measure weak lensing and learn about dark energy in the universe. But on top of that, Euclid will be doing a deep survey. So it's going to cover about 50 square degrees, really, really deep. And those are mostly going to be used for calibration and other science like galaxy evolution, which is what I'm going to be mostly focusing on today. So here's just a picture of where the deep fields are, these little yellow spots here, compared to the wide field, which is this green area here. And so right now, what I'm going to be talking about in the second part of the talk, which is what you can get involved in, is the Q1 data release. So this is data that has already been made public, and it covers these little yellow spots here. It's not as deep as it's going to be when the mission is complete, but right now you can look at Euclid data in these little deep fields here. And then also you might have heard on the news that the first data released at DR1 came out for the internal collaboration back in October, and it will be made public next October. And that's what this blue area is here. So in about half a year, you'll be able to play with not only these little spots, but this big blue area. Okay, so now I'm going to show you guys a little movie here. So this is just a movie that someone in the Euclid collaboration made looking at one of the Euclid tiles. So this picture here is one tile from the Euclid mission. And so first we're going to zoom in on, well, here's a random galaxy. It's close enough that it has a name. UGC, blah, 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 phone number. Um, and this picture is an RGB image, right? So this is made with three of the four Euclid filters to make these nice red, green, blue colors. But this is all just Euclid data that has gone into making this image. So one of the cool things about Euclid is that because it's in space, you have really good angular resolution, much better than what you get from the ground. And on top of that, Euclid is made to be very sensitive to low surface brightness emission. So you can see this really faint ring around the galaxy there. But really, the cool thing is all the stuff that you can't see in this video. All these little green circles there are galaxies that are detected in the image, and there are well, thousands, 60,000. So in this one tile, there are 60,000 galaxies. And of course, this is just one tile, and it's a tiny fraction of what the full Euclid survey will be. So that really, you know, demonstrates just how much data there is going to be coming from this telescope. And here's just a few science highlights of what's been coming out of the Euclid data so far. So in that video, you saw a little Einstein ring, but there are hundreds of strongly lensed galaxies that have been discovered in just the first Euclid data release. So here's a little gallery of a handful of them. And these are really cool because you can learn about the dark matter distribution of in the foreground galaxy, and you get really you're zooming in on the background galaxy, so you get really high. You can study the background galaxy in gory detail. There have also been thousands of local dwarf galaxies discovered in these Euclid images, which you couldn't see in previous optical imaging because you really need to be sensitive to low surface brightness, and dwarf galaxies are inherently low surface brightness objects. And then because Euclid looks at so much of the sky at a time, half square degree every image, and there's already 100 square degrees available, you can start to study things related to the galaxy environment. So you can see how do the properties of galaxies correlate with their large scale environment that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do with little tiny fields of view. And so this paper here, for example, found that, based on the environment of a galaxy will evolve from a spiral to a quiescent, star forming spiral galaxy to a quiescent galaxy, following these different evolutionary trajectories depending on what environment they're in. So that was pretty cool. But what I want to spend most of the time talking about is a paper that I published because I have more to say about my own stuff. But again, it wasn't just me; it was me and RFA and Douglas Scott and Puya, who are all of us worked on this together. So I'm going to tell you a bit about this paper that I worked on using Euclid data. So just for context, this is a plot of the cosmic background. So this is the average brightness of the whole universe at all wavelengths. So for example, this is the cosmic microwave background, the CMB. It's a 2.73 Kelvin black body. But you can imagine, doing the same experiment at all the other wavelengths. And then in particular out here, you start to see other peaks, right? So this is thermal radiation left over from the hot Big Bang. But these other peaks in the optical and the infrared wavelengths, these are coming from all of the stars and all of the dust in all of the galaxies in the universe at all redshifts. So the combined emission from all the galaxies in the universe make these two peaks here. And so Euclid is observing in the optical range. So Euclid is basically sensitive to the light from all of the stars in all the galaxies at all redshifts in the universe. But conversely, in the infrared and the far infrared here, this is where this emission is coming from all the dust in all the galaxies in the universe. And then you need other telescopes like Herschel and Scuba 2 to observe the dust emission. And the reason why this is important is because if this is a plot of a typical spectral energy density distribution of a galaxy. So, again, most of the light from a galaxy is coming from either stars or dust. So stars in the optical and dust in the infrared. And there's this well-known correlation between basically the optical and the infrared emission called the star forming main sequence, which says that the star formation rate of a galaxy is proportional to the stellar mass, which basically means if you see more emission in the optical, you'll see more emission in the infrared and vice versa. But really, that doesn't tell you too much. That's just saying bigger galaxies are bigger. But if you look at this correlation in more detail, which people have been doing for decades, um, it's a bit more complicated. So the correlation between how many stars a galaxy forms and the galaxy's total stellar mass follows this somewhat more complicated relationship. You can see it here. So basically, there's a characteristic star formation rate, a maximum star formation rate that galaxies cannot surpass. So it doesn't matter how massive a galaxy gets, there's a cutoff to how much stars the galaxy can form. And then this M0 parameter here is that sort of cutoff stellar mass where the star formation rate stops tracking the stellar mass. And so this has been studied in a lot of detail, including this here. This was studied using just Euclid data alone. Um, and so that's what's happening. That tells you how, the stellar emission is correlated with the far infrared emission, but there's a bit more going on than just that you cannot answer, that you cannot see with just Euclid. So in particular, the far infrared SED here, which is proportional to the integral of this is proportional to the star formation rate. It has a peak and it has a peak amplitude and a peak frequency. The peak amplitude is related to the dust mass, and then the peak frequency is related to the dust temperature. And these things get correlated together to tell you about how many stars a galaxy is forming, and then that's correlated to the stellar mass. And the reason why this is interesting is because there's a big mystery. There's been a big mystery for a while about, um, do the dust temperatures of galaxies increase with higher redshift, with redshift. So here, this is a plot showing the average dust temperature. So that's the peak frequency of the SED. Is this plot showing you that it's not increasing with redshift? Here's a plot that's showing you that it is increasing with redshift, although the title of the paper says that there's no redshift evolution in the dust temperature. Another plot showing you no evolution. So anyways, nobody seems to agree about whether or not the average dust temperatures of galaxies increase with redshift. And maybe you would expect they do, maybe you expect they don't. I mean, simulations don't really help with this. And then again, this is all baked into the correlation with the galaxy star forming main sequence, because dust temperature is related to the star formation rate and stuff. So to figure out what's going on with this dust temperature mystery, we used Euclid. So there are about 20 square degrees on the sky where the Euclid images, which is this gray outline here, overlap with images from the far infrared telescopes like Herschel Spire and Scuba 2. And there are about 2.6 million star-forming galaxies from the Euclid data that overlap with this far infrared data. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to do a stacking analysis. We wanted to measure what is the average far infrared brightness of these Euclid galaxies. So what is the average brightness at 250, 350, 500 microns of Euclid galaxies in bins of redshift and stellar mass to see if there is any evolution in these dust properties. So stacking, what is stacking? Basically, you have a bunch of images of galaxies and you average them to make an average picture of a galaxy. I mean, that's basically all stacking is. You're just averaging. Now, there are lots of myths out there related to stacking. So sometimes you'll hear people say you can't stack when you have more than one source per pixel. That turns out to be not true. Some people think that you cannot stack below the confusion limit. That is also not true. You might hear people say that you can't stack on a map that has an average of 0. It's the opposite. You can't stack on a map that doesn't have an average of 0. You hear things like clustering will bias your results, and that is true, but you can fix it. And so the stacking algorithm that we used was this thing called SimStack, which Marco Vieira worked on over 10 years ago. where you take your Euclid catalog, you split it into bins of redshift and stellar mass, and then so here is, blue galaxies. Let's say blue galaxies are low redshift, and green ones are medium redshift, and pink ones are high redshift. And and then you can write down this simple equation. You just say that your data is some amplitude times, the distribution of galaxies convolved with the beam, and you do some linear algebra, and you can read Marco's paper if you want to learn about the details. But the main point is this algorithm is actually, you can show mathematically that this takes care of the bias from clustering, and the algorithm is really well behaved, so it works for as many galaxies as you want. So when we ran this stacking algorithm on the far infrared data using the Euclid catalog, here's what we got. So we have 6 different far infrared wavelengths coming from Herschel and Scuba 2. And then, so every one of these little bins, as you move across to the right, you're increasing in redshift. So these are Euclid galaxies with increasing redshift. As you move up, they are Euclid galaxies with increasing stellar mass. And then these are just what the average galaxy looks like in the far infrared and in that bin of redshift and stellar mass. So you can see there's a whole lot of information here. This is the same information plotted in a bit more of a succinct way. So these are, again, redshift is increasing to the right, stellar mass is increasing up. And every one of these little plots is the SED. So I've just taken the brightness and plotted it as a function of wavelength for every one of these little plots. So you can see, just like I was talking about before, right? So in each one of these SEDs, the peak frequency, that tells you about the dust temperature. The peak amplitude tells you about the dust mass. And then the area under the curve tells you about the total star formation rate. So now we've been able to measure, you know, what's going on in the far infrared for 2.6 million Euclid galaxies, all split into different bins of redshift and stellar mass. So let's look at some of these. So these are the star formation rates. And actually, I'm showing you, this plot shows you the ratio of the star formation rate that I measured compared to the star formation rate that is measured using Euclid data alone. So the denominator here is just from the star formation rates measured by Euclid alone. And so it looks pretty good. I mean, you would hope that there's nothing crazy. There's a lot of scatter, of course. There's always going to be a lot of scatter, but I would say that they're roughly consistent with each other. So really the interesting thing, though, is we want to know what's going on with the dust temperature. So here's a plot of the dust temperature. So this is the average temperature of dust grains in galaxies as a function of redshift, or here I plotted it as a function of the age of the universe. And so first you'll see that, yes, galaxies at higher redshift do indeed have, on average, hotter dust grains. So that is the answer to the dust mystery. Another interesting thing you'll see is that it doesn't really matter what the stellar mass of a galaxy is. The dust temperature is the same. So the average dust temperature of a galaxy doesn't matter. It doesn't care about the dust mass. At a given redshift, galaxies of all stellar masses have basically the same dust temperature on average. And it agrees really well with this exponential model here. So, which has a plateau, right? So for the past, since redshift 1 or so, pretty much all galaxies have had a dust temperature of about 23 Kelvin. And you have to go past redshift 1 to see this increase. Now, the other thing I will just mention is the dust mass, because you also can see what's going on with the dust mass. That's the amplitude of those SEDs. And so between redshift 0 and redshift 1, there was an increase in the dust mass to stellar mass ratios of all of the star-forming galaxies in the universe. And that's just related to the fact that galaxies have stopped accreting material from their environments because the universe is expanding. So there's less stuff in a galaxy to turn into dust and stars. So that's why this ratio is decreasing. And also, you can see that more massive galaxies, these yellow points here are more massive galaxies, they tend to have less dust per unit stellar mass compared to smaller galaxies, which is kind of counterintuitive. Maybe you think that bigger galaxies have more dust, but it's actually because of this plateauing of this maximum star formation rate that galaxies have. Because remember, I told you that there's a point at which if a galaxy gets too big, the star formation rate stops following, and star formation is what produces dust. So that actually checks out. Okay, so this is the kind of take-home message. So there's this complicated 4D nonlinear time-evolving correlation between stellar mass and star formation rate and dust mass and dust temperature, and it's been really confusing to figure out what's been going on for quite a long time. But now that we have Euclid, we have excellent statistics. And so it turns out that these correlations can be understood pretty clearly with just the galaxy main sequence and an evolving dust temperature. And so, again, the big question was, do galaxy dust properties evolve with time? And the answer is yes, it looks like they do. And, what is the interpretation of this? Well, one way to think about it is since the average star formation rates of galaxies decrease to have been, decreasing steadily to zero, that's what the main sequence says. But the dust temperatures of galaxies decrease to this constant 23 Kelvin. That seems to suggest that the process that heats dust grains in the galaxy has been transitioning from star forming regions to existing cool stars in a galaxy. So that's kind of a neat thing. So I think that's it for the science stuff. I mean, maybe we can take a quick breather here. I mean, does anybody have any questions about Euclid science before we go on to how you can get involved? And I can't really see what you guys are doing, but
I don't see any hands raised, so um,
okay, no problem. So then,
oh, sorry, we have one question in the chat.
okay,
Uh,
I don't have my chat open. Let's see here. I can open my
oh,
chat.
sorry. Hey, I think it might have been directly me. Uh, Margaret was asking, how big a field was it that had 60,000 galaxies in it?
Hmm. Yeah, so that was about half a square degree by half a square degree that had 60,000 galaxies in it. And I'm actually gonna show you more pictures of how that all works later on when I explain I mean, I didn't really tell you what a tile is. A tile is not a Euclid observation, so it is. I will explain all that. But that picture it was about half a square degree by half square degree. Yeah.
And we do have one hand raised. Stephen, I think you're unmuted already.
Yep. The perhaps you explained it to me, but I may have missed it. Why does the resolution help you with Euclid, or could you use any large survey?
Well, for this particular paper where we looked at the average star formation rates and dust temperatures, the resolution does not matter with Euclid. So for the stacking thing, what you're actually calculating is the cross correlation between a catalog and an image. So the Euclid catalog, there's no information about resolution there. So for this particular paper, the resolution was not a big thing. But we have other ideas of incorporating the Euclid resolution to with this stacking thing. So you could imagine splitting splitting the Euclid catalog into groups of spiral galaxies and
Hmm,
elliptical
right, right, right.
galaxies and seeing if there's a correlation between them. I mean, I mentioned this paper that saw how spiral galaxies evolve into elliptical galaxies in a different way depending on the environment. And so we were trying to see if, does the star formation rate or the dust temperature also evolve differently depending on environment, following what those people did. And that requires really good angular resolution because you need to be able to tell, does this galaxy have a bar? Does it have spiral arms? Is it, what is its
Okay,
morphology and stuff? Yeah.
okay, that makes sense. Yeah, thanks.
That's all the
Okay,
questions I see. So,
great. Okay, so good. That means we're right on time. So now let's talk a bit about how you guys can get involved in Euclid. Okay, so just to start off, so like I said, there has been the main data set that is publicly available right now is this Q1 data set. Q just means quick. So it's the first quick data release. There's also some early observations which are public, but if you're going to be playing around with Euclid data, it's most definitely going to be with the Q1 data. And so this was made public in March of 2025, so March last year. And so this data covers three deep fields. So here I'm showing you what they are. There's the Euclid Deep Field North, which is clearly it's the only one in the north. And then there's the Euclid Deep Field Fornax, and then the Euclid Deep Field South. And just to confuse everybody, I mean, if you're a galaxy person, then this will be confusing. If you're not a galaxy person, then maybe it's not confusing. But there's the Chandra Deep Field South is a very well-known extragalactic field, and the Chandra Deep Field South is not the Euclid Deep Field South. It's actually the Euclid Deep Field Fornax. I don't know who decided to name these things that way, but it's a bit annoying. But anyway, so there are these three deep fields, and the way the Q1 data works is each one of these deep fields was basically imaged once. So, and that's the same depth that's going to be carried out for the wide field survey. So you're basically getting the deep fields at the depth of the wide field survey. And then later data releases, these deep fields will get deeper. And again, there's, you will have access to vis imaging. So that's the visible wavelength imaging, and then the three near infrared imaging bands, plus some spectroscopy. And then the other cool thing that is available with Q1 that you can play around with is the results from SED fitting. So I talked about looking at galaxies in different redshift bins and stellar mass bins. So these redshifts and stellar masses come from um, the Euclid pipeline, basically modeling the SEDs of galaxies, modeling the fluxes measured by Euclid, plus a bunch of ground-based stuff. So you can play around with all of that. And there's about 30 million objects in the full Q1 catalog, and every one of them has, fluxes and stellar mass estimates and whatever, all sorts of stuff. Okay, so where can you download the data? So there's quite a lot of places. You can play around with this data. So the Euclid Science Archive, I mean, the Euclid Science Archive is kind of the main place where, like, the official place where Euclid data will be stored, and it's hosted by ESA. And then ESA also has will give you access to data labs, which is I'll talk about this, but this is like a platform for interacting with the data. But we also have the data hosted here in Canada at CADC, so you can access all the same stuff through CADC, this link here. Or the CADC equivalent of data labs is CanFAR. And so I'll be talking a bit about that. But there, you can use either one of them, whichever one you prefer. It doesn't matter so much. Okay, so now I'm actually going to go live here. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Open up Safari. Okay, so now you should all see I'm going to talk about how to use this Euclid Science Archive, right? So again, there's a CADC equivalent, but I'm just going to do this one. So, you know, hopefully, everything works out. Whenever you try and do things live, something always messes up, but we'll see how it goes. So this is, if you go to the Euclid Science Archive and you decided that you want to download some Euclid data and play around with it, because again, this is all publicly available. I'm not signed in or anything, right? You don't need an account to do any of this. You can just go on and do it right away. So let's see. I'll go to search, observations. So here's a page where you can search for Euclid observations. Now I'm going to search for a particular right ascension and declination, which I have saved here. Now, okay, so here's a spot on the sky. I don't know, does anybody know where this spot is? Probably not. This is the Hubble Ultra Deep Field. So I don't know, in case you're curious. Okay. And let's just do 30 arc minutes, right? So we're gonna look for Euclid data covering the Hubble Ultra Deep Field. Here's a bunch of imaging things you can look for. The one that's most relevant is level 2 mosaics here. And again, these are in my slides. Hopefully we can post my slides too. But this is all explained in the slides. So level 2 mosaics, and then we want, Mur mosaic. Mur here just means merged, which means the Euclid imaging has been merged into one contiguous footprint on the sky, and the catalogs have all been merged. And then you should only have access to Q1 here, Q1R1. You don't have access to anything else but if you are a Euclid member, and I'll talk about this later, if you are a Euclid member, then you can access DR1, for example. Instrument, we'll just go with Viz, I suppose. And filter, there's only one filter with Viz. So anyways, I'll search and voila. So here are a bunch of tile IDs. and I'll explain what a tile is in just a minute. But there are a bunch of tile IDs. These are the centers of the tiles, and you can just, click on one and download them. So that's how you download Euclid images. It's quite straightforward. Now, let me just go back to my keynote. Right. So, yes, I mentioned, what is a tile versus what is an observation. So I think this image here explains things a bit because tiles will come up quite a lot when you are looking at Euclid data. And then that video I showed you before, it said, here's one tile, and how big is a tile? What is a tile? So the way it works is the sky has been split into little squares, and there's, of a given size and a given orientation. And so the sky has been gridded into these squares. And Euclid, those are called tiles. So these blue lines here are tiles, but they're just arbitrary. Somebody made them up. They don't actually exist anywhere. The real thing that exists are the Euclid observations, right? So in this case, Euclid has been taking pictures in this diagonal pattern relative to the tiles. But today it'll be this way, and tomorrow it'll be that way, and another day it'll be. So the Euclid data are just have random orientations, but the tiles are fixed. So it's actually quite convenient to split the sky up into these tiles. So when you look for Euclid data, you'll be looking for, which tile does my special spot in the sky live in, right? And then you can go and figure out from that, you will go and download data relative to the tile. And then people have already taken all of the Euclid observations with all sorts of orientations and co-added them and segmented them into these little tiles. And each one of these tiles, as I mentioned before, it's 32 by 32 arc minutes, so half square degree on the side. So that's what the tile is. And that's very important. Another thing, if you are familiar with the ESA sky, on that same page I was showing, I'm not going to go back and do this in real time, but if you click on this visualize button, you can bring up this ESA sky GUI. So basically, here, this white circle, I put in the same RA index that I put in before, the same search radius, and it shows you which Euclid tiles. It just shows you the spatial distribution of the Euclid tiles. I mean, you can plot lots of other different things if you're a fan of. It's very useful for visualizing what's going on when you do a search, whereas the query, you don't really see anything. Okay, so are there any questions about accessing Euclid images through these things, through this Euclid Science Archive? And then the CADC thing is very similar, so I'm not going to go over that one. But yeah, so are there any questions about this? Okay, then I'll keep on going. So now we're going to go back. Yeah, so now I'm going to go back to my thing here. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a bit about how do you query catalogs instead of how do you query images? Okay, right. So here, so again, search. If we're not doing observations, we're doing a catalog search. I got to put my Hubble ultra deep field coordinates in there again. And I think I was doing a 30 arc minute. Yeah. Okay. So catalogs. So we want the MER. MER again means merged. So the merged catalog. This is the full Euclid catalog that you have access to. Okay, and so if I click on this here, the display columns, so this shows you all of the columns that are in this particular catalog. There's an overwhelming number of columns. I know it is pretty intense. Um, and I'll talk a bit about the columns in a little bit, but so I'm just going to leave it for now. And then you can submit your query and it's going to do some stuff and it returns the results. So this is you know, you can download this. It's just a table of all the columns that I wanted at that particular position. Now, if I go back to my search here, so this is nice, but you might want a more flexible search. And so what I usually do is show the query. So this under the hood, when you're doing when you're running this search, it just generates an astro query for you, right? So, and then this is showing you what the query actually looks like, right, in code, in coding. And if you want, you can edit it. And so when you really need to do some hardcore searches, you would actually write your own query, stick it in here, or modify this query or what have you, and then submit your job. Now, this is also doing it this way is also very useful because if you see on the left side here, um, this sort of directory shows you all of the catalogs that you have access to because there are actually more catalogs than just the MER catalog. So here, this is the one that we were just looking at, right? This MER catalog. And here's all the bajillions of columns. But if you want, for example, stellar masses or redshifts, they are actually in this PHZ. PHZ probably means photometric redshift, I'm assuming. So this is the catalog which contains the information from fitting SEDs. So I think if I click on this catalog here, you'll see redshift probability, physical parameters, right? So this has luminosities. This one has stellar masses down here somewhere. Yeah, stellar masses. So this is where you'll find all of that information. And so if you see, in my astro query, right now I'm grabbing all of the columns from this MER catalog, but if I wanted stellar masses, I would just change MER catalog to PHZ underscore physical underscore parameters. And then, you can and then this is the column that you want. So you just change the names to reflect that. So that's how you can write more sophisticated query. I mean, you can add all sorts of ifs and conditions and blah 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 using this format. So this can be quite helpful. Okay, so now I'm going to go back. Any questions about that? Wait, maybe I'll keep this up. I'll keep this here because this is actually kind of important. So any questions about how this all works? Uh,
I have a question, Riley. Can you hear
yeah.
me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So I'm a this galaxy star formation person, so I don't really care about all the other galaxies. And I know Euclid had a couple press release images of star forming region. Are those accessible through the Euclid Science Archive and through CanFAR?
Star forming regions in our galaxy.
In Milky Way, yeah.
In the Milky Way, yeah. So no, not so there's
The press release
sort
images.
of, yeah. So not through here. So this only what I'm talking about, this website, this interface is just for Q1 data publicly. What you're talking, yeah, so there was before the Q1 press release, there was this ERO data, early release observations. And so that data is available online. It's just a different website. So I don't have it in here, but if you just Google Euclid ERO observations access or whatever, I mean, you'll find it pretty quickly. So yeah, you can download FITS files of the Euclid images of the Horsehead Nebula, I think it was. That's what
Mhm.
it, and then, the corresponding catalog. So just like this, it was um, made using a slightly different pipeline than was used to generate the newer, because things have been improving with time. So it doesn't translate one to one between, the catalog names and whatever don't translate one to one. But yeah, you can download the Euclid images of the Horsehead Nebula because that's the ERO stuff. And I'll just mention for people that are not just working on, galaxies, uh, Q2, the plan for Q2 is to observe the bulge of the Milky Way. So I don't know how many star forming regions there are in the bulge, but I'm pretty sure there will be more than the complete opposite direction of the center of the Milky Way. And then there's also going to be tons of stars and globular clusters and all that kind of stuff. So that data will be, and I'm not sure what exactly the timeline is for Q2, but certainly like less than a year timescale, I'm assuming.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, good question. Okay, any other questions about this? Okay, if not, then I'll go back to my slides here. Okay, so yeah, so like I said, there's lots and lots and lots of information from these in these catalogs, let alone the images themselves. So I mean, I've just, in the MER catalog, I've just pointed out a few. So you probably want to know right ascension, declination. Object ID is found in every single catalog and is every object that comes from source extractor gets an object ID and it's the same in all the catalogs. So you can always cross match between different catalogs using the object ID. There's things that are related to the shapes, ellipticity, semi-major axis. There's flags like point like probability, detection, quality, fluxes measured in 20 different ways. So you can do all sorts of stuff. And there's so from the when you fit an SED, you don't just get one number for the best fit physical parameter. You actually get a probability distribution, so you can get 68% confidence intervals, medians, modes, means of the distributions. Um, and then spectra, I'm not going to talk at all about the spectra actually, but I'm just going to point out that there are spectra available. So, there's line fluxes, volotaf maxes, line IDs, things like that. Maybe I'll just point out the spectra are still under construction. So they're not the greatest, but they're getting better. People are working hard on the spectra. And there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds more columns. So there's just like tons of information out there. Okay. And then, of course, before you jump in and start looking at all these columns and getting as confused as I did, you should read the documentation. I mean, it's very useful. So if you click on the support tab here, there's lots of help for what exactly the definitions of the columns are and all that kind of stuff. And there's lots of links to other websites where the documentation can be found here. And like if you want to download bulk data, I mean, there's some useful scripts that have been pre-made in this bulk data thing. And you can also run all of these queries through your terminal if you want to write if you want to generate like automatic commands using a more sophisticated script and like keep querying the catalog and do really complicated stuff. I mean, you can do all sorts of complicated stuff. It's not too hard. Okay. Now I'm just going to talk a little bit about Data Labs or CanFarb. So this, what I was just describing before is how you would, if you wanted to download data from the Euclid archive and put it on your hard drive and play with it yourself. But there's another option, which is called Data Labs, or the equivalent through CAC would be called CanFar. So you can actually access all of this Euclid data uh, remotely, so no need to put anything on your hard drive and do all your computing on a cloud computing resource. So how does that work? So getting like this, and this, it's the same with with CanFar as Data Labs. I've just got the description here for Data Labs, but moral equivalent for CanFar. So you can self-register. You do have to have an account, but accounts for Data Labs or CanFar or are available for anybody. I mean, there is a human being that you basically just type in your name and your email address, and then but there is a human being on the other side that validates your account. So you can't just use a crazy email address. It has to be, there's probably, the human being on the other side is probably making sure that the email address is something to do with the university or something like that. So it's not, and it takes a couple of days for the human being on the other side to validate your account. But anyways, there's no restrictions. You don't have to be a Euclid member to make a Data Labs account or a CanFar account, and anybody can do it. And so once you have your account, you just go to the Data Labs website or the CanFar website, which I've got links in the previous slide, and hopefully my slides will be made available to everybody. They go to one of those places and launch a new environment. So it seems similar to CanFar. So I'm going to next here do a little run through for how that works. Okay, so I'm actually going to show you how this works with CanFar, not with Data Labs. Even though my slides were talking about Data Labs, not CanFar, I just stole those slides from a grad student who was working on Data Labs, but I do everything on CanFar. But anyways, so here, I've gone to canfar.net. I've logged in because I've already made my account. I've started a Jupyter notebook. Data Labs looks very similar to this, so don't worry. So this is my environment. So I'll click on that. And it runs. Okay, great. And oh, look at that. I have an example.ipynb here. So, but first I'm going to show you. So right now I'm logged into CanFar, and again, Data Labs will look very similar. And you can see this is my home directory. I've got random stuff here. But if I go to yeah, so the directory structure for Data Labs will be slightly different than it is for CanFar, but you can do it's the moral equivalent. So here I'm in the Euclid folder of CanFar because I made my account and I started this new session. And this is available for anybody with a CanFar account, and it's available for anybody with a Data Labs account. If you're a Euclid member and you go onto Data Labs, you'll also see DR1 data. But if you're not a Euclid member, as most of you probably are not, then you will just see the Q1 data until the DR1 stuff. And right now we're only looking at Q1 data. So Data Labs will be very much the same. So there's a folder with catalogs. Oh, it takes a minute to load, but you can like browse the directory structure and see how everything is organized. I mean, it's not very informative doing this, but you know, images, we've got noise images, PSF images, all sorts of things. So, you can go on here and familiarize yourself with how all this works. And why this is important, why this is nice, is because here's a example Jupyter notebook that I started, right? So now this is where all of the Euclid data live in this virtual environment. And here, I'm just going to get a list of the file names for all of the viz images in Q1 and all of the YJH, the NISP images in Q1 and all of the catalogs. And then there, now I don't have to have like so many terabytes of stuff on my hard drive. It all lives on CanFAR, but I can now access it. So for example, here I'm going to open a random viz image, whatever. Um, and then, so again, I said everything is like organized by tiles. So, this random viz image that I grabbed has some tile number on the sky, and I just want to find the corresponding, what you might want to do is find the corresponding NISP images of that same tile. So now you're looking at a part of the sky at all of the Euclid wavelengths. So you just have to do some cross matching with the tiles. I'm not going to go into details for how to code to do it, but you can kind of understand what's going on. And then, okay, so, there's what, 60,000 objects in this tile. It's a big tile. The tiles have about 19,000 pixels on a side, so they're quite big. So I'm just going to crop it to make my code faster. Convert units. I'm a submillimeter astronomer. I like Jansky's per square degree, but they come in magnitudes per pixel by default. Blah, blah, blah. Turn it into an RGB image, and will it work? Hey, voila. So there you go. So I mean, I don't have this on my computer. It all lives on CanFAR, but I've now made a nice RGB image of some small chunk of a Euclid tile. And I could go and find the catalogs for all the objects in there and whatnot. So that's how Data Labs works. That's how CanFAR works. And so this is a thing that you guys can all do yourselves. Just register for an account on Data Labs or on CanFAR, and then you can start accessing all of this Euclid data and writing Jupyter notebooks to do some computing things and whatnot. If you don't want to use the querying stuff and get it on your hard drive yourself. Okay, so now I think, again, I'm going to stop for questions. Does anybody have any questions about how all of this works? Okay, if not, then, oh, okay. So one question from Stephen. But probably
Sorry.
you were going to tell me I said something wrong about what's going
No,
on
no,
in
no, no.
CanFAR.
It's all great. And thank you for demoing CAMFAR as well as Data Labs. Thank you very much. I was just going to say that so Q1 is obviously been there for a while. DR1 has been transferred over and is sitting on CDC hard drives,
Oh,
but you
yeah.
won't be able to find it because we haven't done the metadata ingestion yet.
Mhm.
We brought over the viz and near images, but not much else. And we brought over the MER catalog, but not any of the other catalogs. Once everything's ready to go, we'll be making an announcement on the Cascade. Well, no, the Euclid mailing list because it's still
Mhm.
proprietary.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we are looking for input for which data products to bring over and which data products are not useful to people. And that's all. So yeah, no, thank you for an
Mhm.
excellent talk and a good demo of what we offer.
Yeah,
Better than
so
I could have done.
great. Yeah. So yeah, once like Steven said, once that data gets ported in this folder here, presumably I would also see the DR1 stuff. So that's going to be coming. But then I wouldn't be able to show you this because that's secret. Okay, hand up for you, Vic Astro.
Hi, yeah, I was wondering, I'm a member of the Euclid Consortium, and I
Mhm.
was wondering how you link your CanFAR account to be able to access DR1, like once that's already been initiated.
Yes, so send an email to Stephen.
If you're a Euclid member, I knew you were a Euclid member at the time up. You already have access. If you're somebody I don't know or I didn't recognize the name, I took a list of all the Euclid members in Canada and tried to cross match with their CDC accounts. So it may already have happened, but if your name was ambiguous, I may not have added. So yeah, send an email. It's fine.
Cool,
Or I
thank you.
guess like when new grad students will probably be joining. So,
Exactly.
and then, so yeah, I mean, if you're a new grad student and you're going to want to work with Euclid, then yeah, you'll have to send an email to Stephen and then he'll get you this. And same with when you make a Data Labs account, if you want to go the Data Labs route, if you make a Data Labs account, if you are a Euclid member, then it's actually you make a Cosmos account, but the Euclid collaboration will send you a special link to make your Cosmos account, and then it will have access to DR1 stuff as well as Q1 stuff. But that should happen automatically through the ESA end. Okay, well, that's a good segue to the last quick thing I wanted to talk about, actually, because and again, uh, so I guess it is now at the hour, but people were told they could book off an hour and a half. I don't think I'll take up the full hour and a half. I just got a few more things to say about actually like joining Euclid officially. So I guess nobody has to run off or anything, right? Okay, great. Yeah. So the last little bit, right? So as we were talking about DR, it will become public in 2020 in October of this year, but if you are a Euclid member, you can access it now. And then I'm going to talk a bit about how you would become an official Euclid member and what benefits you get from that and all that kind of stuff. But first, I just want to just highlight, why maybe should be excited about DR1 and of course DR2 and DR3. So the area that's available now to Euclid members is 1900 square degrees compared to about 100 square degrees for Q1. And remember, there were 30 million objects in Q1. Now there's 850. We're almost at a billion objects. Not all of these things are galaxies. There's a bunch of junk. It's probably more like 300 million galaxies, but still, that's a lot of galaxies. And here's just the area that's covered. And so every day another couple square degrees. Right. So Euclid is an international collaboration. Um, and Canada is a member country of the Euclid Consortium. So what that means is for grad students, what that means is if your supervisor is has joined the Euclid Consortium, then you can too. And all professors in Canada have the option to join Euclid, more or less. It's a bit more complicated than that. There's a certain number of Canadian professors that could be part of Euclid at a given time, and the number fluctuates, and then blah, 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 blah. But you don't need to worry about that. That's beyond your pay grade. What I'm saying is if your supervisor is in Euclid, then you can join Euclid too. Just ask them. And it's that's as easy as it gets. And then joining Euclid, you just have to write a very short letter of intent. Why do you want to join Euclid? And then you send that to your supervisor, and they send it to the right people. And then you get some emails from them, and you're good to go. It's very, very easy. So why would you want to join Euclid? It's so when you as a Euclid member, you can access the data early, right? You don't need to wait until it becomes public. And then also you get to write Euclid paper. So the paper I was talking about before, that's a Euclid Consortium paper. So if this is for students who might already be in Euclid, like the person that asked the question from the UVic. So if you are already in Euclid, this is for you. So if you have an idea, or there's something that you want to work on with Euclid data and you're a Euclid member, and you want to write a Euclid paper, there's a few steps that you have to, it is a big collaboration, so there's some bureaucracy hoops to jump through. So you need to identify the appropriate science working group and key project. So again, these are all things that probably that your supervisor would sort out for you. But for example, for me, right, my paper was under the Galaxy Evolution Science Working Group because it's about galaxy evolution. And then the key project was the baryon cycle through scaling relations, which I would never have figured out myself. But Douglas figured it out for me. And then you just get in touch, your supervisor will email them and make sure that no one else is already working on that. And then you're basically good to go. And then all of these key projects and science working groups, they all have recurring telecons, as any collaboration would. So you would join the telecon and present an outline of your project. And that's once that's done, your project will get registered. There's a special website where all of the registered projects can be found. and then you get assigned a style expert and an internal reviewer. So you cannot get your paper out the door until the style expert and the internal reviewer are happy with it. And that's just to make sure that all of the collaboration papers, threshold of professionalism and stuff. But there's usually no problems with this. It's all very good. Everyone's very, very helpful, and everybody just wants to see papers come out, wants to see science done. And so if you see a Euclid paper, I mean, this is kind of how it looks. The first author is Euclid collaboration colon the name. So this is not a Hill et al. 2026 paper. This is a Euclid collaboration Hill et al. 2026 paper. That's what you see when other people reference your paper. It will say Euclid collaboration first and then your name. It's just the format that's been chosen by the collaboration. I think it is nice because it emphasizes the fact that you wrote a paper with a big collaboration. Then there's a second tier of authors. So, you probably won't be working on this paper all by yourself. You'll have some help from supervisors and other grad students in the group and stuff. So everybody that really like actually worked on the paper would go second tier. So these people get added by the lead author. And then this big giant paragraph of this actually goes on 2 pages. It goes on more than this. So all these people, all they did was they just signed up for the paper. So if you're in the Euclid collaboration and you meet a certain threshold criteria for how much time you spend on collaboration duties, then you can add your name to any paper you want. So all these people are just adding their names to all the papers, even though I'm guessing most of them didn't read it. I mean, everybody should read the papers, but I'm guessing most of these people didn't read the paper, but their name's on it. But anyways, that's just how it works with big collaborations. But it's good because writing a paper through the collaboration as opposed to writing it on your own, you do get a lot more feedback from your internal referee, from the style expert, from the other people in the relevant group. So I found it was a very positive experience. And so if you are part of Euclid already, you should consider getting a paper going, and it's a lot of fun. So that's any questions about that? Any questions about being an official Euclid member from everybody? Okay, because if not, I mean that's basically it. I just I'm hoping that I've convinced you guys that Euclid is a cool mission, and I'm really hoping to see more Canadians using the data and getting involved. And so that's all I have to say. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. I was trying to figure out how to make the claps happen, but yeah. Yeah, so thank you. I mean, yeah, right now, like I said, we're over the hour, so if people do need to leave, we understand. But if people have any questions or discussion or anything like that, we should definitely we can open the floor to that. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I had maybe just one question
Mhm.
about joining the collaboration. Is there any route, do you know, for a grad student who maybe their supervisor isn't directly a part of the collaboration to still get involved?
No, not at the moment. Not that I know of anyways.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you have to. So if your supervisor is not within the Euclid collaboration, then you focus on the public data and stuff. Unfortunately, yeah,
Yeah.
it
Okay.
is not possible at the moment to do that. But things might change. I don't know. Those questions are beyond my pay.
Yes, yeah.
Whether or not the collaboration rules will change or not. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's a good question though. I mean, I don't want it to sound like it's some exclusive club or anything. Like
Yeah,
it's
you
just
gotta got to go through your supervisor. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's all related to like, who actually built the telescope and who's actually like paying to maintain it and stuff. So Canada has contributed some fraction to the actual. I mean, it's expensive, right? It's like $1 billion or something. So if you didn't, if your host institution didn't contribute much to it, then you can't just. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's where these rules come from. I mean,
Yeah.
Um, I'm just going to leave in here. So
yeah,
Canada can join Euclid in exchange for data from CFHT primarily.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so it's all of Canada, not just one institution, contributed. We didn't contribute cold hard cash, we contributed data. In
yeah.
exchange, we got a certain number of seats that have been carefully negotiated by Mike Cousin, who I may or may not be online, and also Martians Wiki. At the moment, we're at our cap of professors. Uh, that said, going to be negotiating for a few extra because we have contributed a bit of extra data. So we're expecting maybe 5 or 6 or possibly 10 more professors to be added to the list in the not too distant future. At the moment, however, yeah, it's totally capped in terms of professors. If you're a student or a postdoc belonging to, attached to one of those professors, to not one of those professors, there's not really an option that I can think of off the top of my head for how to join. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, there's a lot of publicly available data to go through first. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I mean,
awesome. Is there any other questions or anything from anyone online? Raise your hand now as your last chance. Yeah. Okay. Well, if not, yeah, thank you all for coming. There was a great turnout, and hopefully, I know I learned a lot of this. It was really cool. So hopefully you guys did too. Um, Keep an eye open for more CAT seminars that we put on different observatories and collaborations. And hopefully we'll have just as many people keep showing up to all of these. Yeah, so thank you, Ryley, for a great talk. We will post this recording on the YouTube, and also, yeah, we'll put your slides up on the website so people will be able to access them. Yeah, and
great.
go ahead.